What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we've got another episode of Quick Sips, and I think it's going to be a pretty awesome episode. The reason I say that is because the sample, the whiskey I'm going to be taking a look at today, thanks to Dustin P, is Redemption Rye, the 18-year Redemption Rye. Not this one, not the 10-year barrel strength. No, this is the 18-year Redemption Rye whiskey that was released like 5 or 6 years ago. It goes for, I think, over $1,000 at this point on the secondary market. And according to the Redemption website, there were only 600 bottles of this released. So extremely limited. I just feel honored to be able to sip this. Thank you so much, Dustin, for sending this along. And the other half of this sample, which is a generous 2-ounce sample, the other half of this went to Stuff and Whiskey. I sent it along with a Lucky 7 pick to Josh and Aaron. So if you haven't seen Stuff and Whiskey, which if you're watching this channel, I'm assuming you have, but if you haven't, I will link them on a link card above here, whether that's a recent video or their channel, whatever I can link to, go check them out. But yeah, Redemption Rye 18, this is awesome. The proof of this whiskey is 109.9 math. What is that math? 54.95% ABV. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry, but I think that's what it is. So 109.9 proof. It is cask strength. It is a 95.5 rye from MGP. I think that's all we really need to know. Obviously, this is a quick sip. I'm going to go straight through this video. Hopefully no edits. And I should also mention, I have 2 other whiskeys poured out here. First and foremost, the younger brother, sister, cousin of this 18-year, which is the 10-year Redemption Rye at cask strength. 116.2, so a little higher proof, 10 years old. And then the oldest rye that I own, which was just recently released, it's kind of the revival of the Mount Vernon rye brand, is a 14-year MGP sourced rye at 108.2 proof. All right, so comparable proof points. I'm going to be curious to see how it stacks up, but first and foremost, let's check out this 18-year Redemption Rye on the nose and see what we get. Wow, so that is not at all what I expected this thing to smell like. I guess, I know MGP rye. I know the different kinds that you get. Some are really kind of candied orange forward. Some have a lot of dill. Some have a lot of cinnamon spice. You actually get every one of those notes in here. You can clearly pick them out. Yeah, this briny dill note. Definitely a lot of orange in here. Yeah, and also, of course, cinnamon, black pepper, those standard rye notes, they're all in here. Imagine the most rich and kind of darkest versions of those notes. Definitely, that's the kind of rye whiskey that we're talking about. It's not bright. It's not overly spicy, overly brash or bright or young. It's kind of blanketed by this overall dark overall dark quality, I guess. But one thing I want to call out here, which I guess I didn't know what to expect with this. What I really didn't expect was it to have a Dickel note. And, sometimes George Dickel, with its minerality, with its vitamin quality, that kind of weird chemical note, sometimes it's actually not off-putting. That is what I would classify this as. I'm not looking at this with rose-colored glasses. I promise. If it was weird and gross, I would tell you straight away. You're getting some of that textured quality and that minerality from George Dickel. I've got to assume that it's just the fact that it spent 18 years in a barrel, which is really a long time for rye whiskey. What this makes clear, though, is that rye whiskey, because of how spicy it is, it actually ages pretty gracefully. It doesn't get over-oaked. Definitely not over-oaked. Definitely not overly sweet. It's just continuing to integrate all of those MGP rye notes that we know and love together. It just brings them closer together. It darkens them, but there is this strange, mineral textured quality to it also. There's actually a lot of saltiness here too. Salted caramel, that dill brine. When I talk about certain scotches that are coastal distilleries, I talk about like a sea air. When you go out onto the beach and you smell the salt water, kind of getting that in this as well. Yeah, and maybe a little bit of a cocoa powder note in here too, like a Like if you open a Swiss Miss, you're gonna make some hot chocolate. That powdered cocoa note that you get when you smell that. But let's go to the palate now and see what we get. Cheers. Oh yeah, that takes over right away. Oh, lots of cinnamon. Wow, lots of cinnamon, lots of that salty. I'm not even gonna call it dill. Gosh, sorry, my mouth is watering so much. I'm trying not to just sit here and smack my lips together. I'm not gonna call it dill necessarily, because it's like when you think of bright dill on some of those Willet 4-year ryes and young MGP rye, chicken cock rye, whatever, it's kind of bright and just kind of gross. This is like this weirdly refined dill pickle saltiness in here. I like it a lot. Again, I don't think it's what I quite expected. I'm only going to do one more sip before I do this quick comparison to these two, because I want to have enough left to do that comparison. I'm getting some of those soda Coca-Cola notes in here, that Coca-Cola spice, which if you have to break that Coca-Cola spice down, which you imagine is this brown syrupy kind of thing, when you think about that in whiskey, what makes someone think Coca-Cola when you smell and taste it? It's the woodiness, a slightly dry quality, some cinnamon, some oak spice, some syrupiness. Like that's what comes together to make a Coca-Cola tasting note. All right, if I'm getting like really nerdy about it, you do get that on this Redemption 18. All right, so one quick sip here. Quick sip. One more quick sip, and then we'll do this comparison. Wow, that's so strange. It just tastes old, but not in the way that I've ever tasted another old whiskey. It almost has like a strange dusty quality to it, not in like a funky old bottle dusty smell and taste, but almost like that. Like if you guys have seen my A.H. Hirsch 16-year review, which I'll link it up here, whatever, which is a crazy old whiskey, and it tasted so weird. It has some of that weirdness of A.H. Hirsch 16-year, which was like I said, pavement and all sorts of crazy notes, blacktop. This has some of that quality to it. There's almost like a barbecue sauce note in here too. So let's do a quick comparison, and then I'll give you kind of my final thoughts, wrap it up, give it a rating, all that kind of good stuff. But first, let's start with the Redemption Rye 10-year and see how this thing compares on the nose. Oh, wow. So I love this Redemption Rye 10-year, but when you put it next to something as old and refined and integrated is a great word for this whiskey. It has brought together all of these different MGP rye notes into something that feels so cohesive, blanketed by that weird minerality thing. It makes the 10-year smell sharp and really harsh on the nose, which is unfortunate, honestly. This is another reason why side-by-side comparisons are so valuable, because if you put something next to the wrong thing, let's just say, for instance, Redemption 18 is not a wrong thing, but for the 10-year, it is, because it makes the 10-year smell not that great. So depending on what you put whiskeys next to, it can really impact the way that you interpret the smell and taste when you're checking that whiskey out. All right, let's taste this now. Ooh, lots of really bright orange here. Like Fanta, like orange soda on the palate. That is the prevailing note. Not a lot of dill. A little bit of salinity, a little bit of that salty note that I got on the 18. That is coming through here on the finish. But by and large, a much brighter profile on that 10-year. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love the 10-year, but wow, going back to the 18 is crazy. That cocoa note that I talked about, the cocoa powder and the oak, and a lot of leather now appearing on the 18. Oh yeah, tons of leather. Now let's go to the Mount Vernon 14-year rye. Let's see how this thing compares, which is another rye whiskey that, well, this is an interesting one. At the point that this video releases, I don't know if I will have this review out yet or not. Interesting backstory. If you do want to check it out, you can look that up. But the jury is still out on this. At least at the time that I'm recording this, I haven't reviewed this yet. I haven't made that video. And I'm still trying to figure out what I think of this rye whiskey. But it is the oldest rye I own besides this Redemption 18 sample. So let's check it out on the nose. Ooh, yeah, much more muted. Maybe than both of these, actually. Yeah, about as equally as muted on the nose as the Redemption 18. It's not as sweet. It's not jumping out of the glass as much. It's a little bit more musty. And there's an interesting note. I'm going to just call it out here. If you've ever had a Lysol wipe, like a lemon Lysol wipe, there's if you throw that in the trash can... Oh man, this is specific. I have a trash can in my living room. If I clean up my cat's vomit, this is terrible. And I clean it up and I use these wipes, these Lysol wipes or Clorox, whatever they are, the lemon wipes, and I throw it away in the trash can, and then I scoot it back under the end table. And then I sit down on the couch a couple hours later and I get this kind of whiff of something. It's like this, almost like furniture polish, lemon pledge, these kinds of notes coming out of the trash can. I kind of get a little whiff of that. But it feels stale because it's been sitting out in the trash can for a while. This is the worst note ever. I kind of get that on this Mount Vernon. It's just got this kind of stale wood, stale lemon note on the nose. But there are also some really nice black peppers and cinnamons in here. It's definitely not on the orange side of things like the Redemption 10-year is. Let's check it out on the palate. Cheers. A little flat, honestly. Yeah, really flat, actually. It has some red fruit, like dry red fruit notes that I actually get on the 21% rye MGP bourbon mash bill. Well, this actually really informs the way I feel about this before I shoot my review of it. Yeah, that's kind of flat. Let's go back to the Redemption 18 now. Oh my God. All right, so I'm starting to understand why this is so incredible and why people pay exorbitant amounts of money for it. And I think this comparison helped because before the comparison, it smelled fine, you know? That weird mineral note is still kind of strange, but doing them side by side shows me how this has handled age extremely well. All right, one last sip. Oh, yeah. All right. Okay, Dustin. I get it now. I get it. That's a good rye whiskey. I'm gonna ding it a little bit because I do think that oak note, that it's got to be the oak that's making that minerality. I think it's a little weird. Sorry if this quick sip is going on a little too long. If it's not quick enough for you, I do apologize. But overall, I think this is a really cool rye whiskey. I don't see paying like even the SRP, which I think was like $400. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think the SRP on this was $400. I don't see paying that for this rye. I actually like my ryes to have a little bit of an effervescence to them, a little bit of a sprightly, bright quality because it's a rye whiskey. And so I love this. I love the Templeton rye, the 10-year single barrel. What else? Some of those Hughes picks, whatever. Old MGP rye, and old being like 9 to 10 years old. I like that profile. 18 is almost more of a novelty to me than it is like a practical thing, which is reflected in the secondary price of this bottle. So overall, I mean, we don't need to go through who I recommend this for. I mean, this thing is long gone. If you want to buy one, you're going to pony up over $1,000 on the secondary market. Do I recommend this? I mean, if you get the chance to try it at a bar or at a friend's house, I mean, yeah, at a bar, don't pay over like $40 for a pour of this. I think that's kind of the limit for me. Yeah, rating 90. I'm going to give this a 90 out of 100. I think it's a good rye whiskey. I don't actually think it's like the best rye that I've ever tasted because I just think that it's got a couple of strange elements that I think are very unique to this particular whiskey, but I don't think are mainstream enough tasting notes or acceptable enough to be considered, to make this a great rye whiskey. So anyways, I've yapped on for too long now. I'm starting to slur my words. I'm like 4 or 5 videos deep in my recording session tonight. So I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you so much for checking this out. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment below if you've tried this, if you have any thoughts on this particular bottle. Otherwise, I will see you guys later. I'm gonna end with a final sip of Redemption 10 year. I gotta save this last little sip of the 18 year, probably for my wife, Sarah. I told her I would. I didn't think I would come out of this with any left. There is a sip, so I'm gonna save it for her when she gets home tonight. Cheers, and I'll see you guys next time here on Drums and Drams.